Once, in a quiet village tucked between emerald hills, my father was revered as the wisest man alive. People journeyed from distant lands to seek his counsel. His words carried weight like ancient scripture, and everyone treated him as a beacon of wisdom. But I was nothing like him. I wasted my days in laziness, chasing fleeting pleasures with my friends. Nothing he said ever struck me. I thought I had all the time in the world. But behind those calm, aging eyes, he saw something I didn't, my youth slipping away, and with it, my chances of becoming someone worthy. One chilly evening, he called me into his study, the air thick with unspoken urgency. His hands trembled slightly as he handed me a weathered leather bag. "You are no longer a child," he said solemnly. "You must learn life's truths the hard way." I felt a strange unease as I opened the bag to find clothes for every season, dry rations, a few coins, and an old map. He looked into my eyes and added, "There's a treasure hidden far from here. Go, find it. Discover the purpose of your life. Only then will you know true happiness." Something stirred within me. The word treasure awakened a spark I hadn't felt before. Ambition. For once, my father's idea didn't sound like a boring lecture. I was filled with anticipation. That very night, I packed everything with trembling hands. As the sun rose the next day, I left behind the comforts of my village, stepping into the unknown. With nothing but a map, some supplies, and my father's cryptic blessing, I began my journey. I had no clue what lay ahead. Mountains, forests, danger, maybe even death. But I was finally chasing something, and it felt strangely exhilarating. The first week was deceivingly calm. I passed green fields and sleepy hamlets where strangers greeted me with warmth and food. But as I crossed into denser woods and steeper trails, the real journey began. The weather turned cruel. Storms howled at night. My clothes soaked and dried in endless cycles. At times, I doubted if the map was even real. But then I remembered my father's steady voice. Somewhere ahead, beneath a tree by a cliff, the treasure waited. I trudged on, my body weakening but my curiosity growing. Something told me this journey was not what it seemed. Robbers ambushed me once near a valley pass. They demanded everything I had, but I barely managed to escape by ducking into the thickets. I lay there, breathless, heart pounding like a war drum, leaves scraping my skin as I hid. That night, I couldn't sleep. The fear was real. For the first time in my life, I faced death without my father's protection. I began to understand this wasn't a game or a fairy tale quest. It was survival. And yet, something deeper pulled me forward, a whisper perhaps from the map or my soul. I couldn't turn back now. As seasons changed, so did I. My youthful skin tanned under the sun. I grew lean from effort, sharp from experience. I met nomads who offered me stale bread and stories of spirits guarding mountains. I spent nights in caves and watched the stars as they danced in the silence. Once I followed a wolf from a distance just to avoid crossing a frozen river. I learned to track footsteps, to start a fire with wet twigs, to quiet my breathing when danger lurked. And despite everything, the thought of the treasure kept me going. I had to find it. After months that felt like years, I finally reached the place drawn on the map, a towering cliff that sliced the sky like a blade. Below, an ancient tree stood stubbornly alone, its gnarled roots twisted over the rocks. My heart pounded as I descended carefully. The wind roared, threatening to knock me off balance. I reached the tree, knees trembling, and began digging with my bare hands. I dug until my fingers bled. Hours passed, nothing. The next day, I returned with sharpened sticks. Still nothing. The third day, hunger gnawed at my insides. The treasure, was it ever real? I sat under the tree, broken. My body ached from exhaustion, my mind from despair. Rage bubbled in my chest. Was this my father's cruel joke? Or had someone reached it before me? I stared at the cliff's edge and thought of throwing the map away. But something inside whispered again. Not of gold, but of growth. I didn't fully understand it. Not yet. I had no choice but to turn back. The journey that brought me here would now take me home. But this time, I felt different. I wasn't chasing a prize anymore. I was carrying something else entirely. On my way back, I began to notice things I'd ignored before. The way spring flowers bloomed like bursts of color on the hillsides, how birds seemed to dance in the air during monsoons. I no longer rushed. I stayed in places just to watch the sun bleed into the horizon or to hear the river hum under moonlight. I learned to hunt small animals, purify water, stitch torn fabric, and find direction by reading the stars. I wasn't just returning, I was evolving. The road hadn't changed, I had, and for the first time I didn't want the journey to end. I revisited villages I had passed on the way out. This time I stayed longer. I helped fix a farmer's fence, taught a child how to catch fish, and cooked meals for an old couple who once gave me shelter. It felt good to give, not take. The same strangers now welcomed me like family. I saw the beauty in their simplicity, the strength in their smiles. And something strange happened. I no longer missed the treasure. I didn't even think about it much. My mind was full of memories, my hands full of skills, and my heart full of meaning. When I finally reached home, 2 full years had passed. My village looked the same, but something in me had changed forever. I stepped into the courtyard with hesitant feet, uncertain of how my father would receive me. My clothes were worn, my beard thick, my skin marked by the journey. I walked straight into his room. He was sitting by the window, staring at the horizon like he'd been waiting all this time. The moment he saw me, he stood up, eyes wide with disbelief and pride. Without a word, he pulled me into an embrace that said everything. We sat down, and he looked at me carefully, almost as if trying to read my soul. Then he asked, "So tell me, my son, did you find the treasure?" I stared at him, unsure of how to answer. I wanted to scream, to demand why he had sent me on a chase for something that never existed. But to my surprise, I found myself saying, "I'm sorry, Father. I couldn't find it. Perhaps someone got to it before I did." My voice trembled, not with anger, but with shame. And strangely, I didn't blame him. I blame no one anymore. He smiled, that same calm, knowing smile I had seen 1,000 times as a child. "There was never any treasure hidden under that tree," he said softly. The words struck me like lightning. I froze. My heart pounded with a mix of disbelief and betrayal. "Then why?" I whispered. "Why send me on such a long, brutal journey for nothing?" He stood up and walked slowly to the window. "It wasn't for nothing," he said, gazing outside. "Tell me, how was your journey? Not the destination, but the path that led you there. What did you see? What did you feel?" I wanted to say it was awful, dangerous, tiring, lonely, but that wasn't the truth anymore. I paused. Images flooded my mind. The kindness of strangers, the raw thrill of survival, the beauty of the untamed world, the skills I'd forged with bleeding hands. I was in a hurry to reach the treasure, I admitted. So I didn't notice anything at first, but on the way back, I saw everything. I learned more than I ever thought possible. I felt alive. My voice cracked. I met people who had nothing, yet gave me everything. I found myself in those moments. My father nodded slowly. "That," he said, "was the treasure." I stared at him, unable to speak. "Life isn't about gold or riches," he continued. "It's about the journey, the growth, the stories you collect, and the strength you discover. If I had simply told you this, you'd have never believed me. You had to live it to understand it. And now, you do." His words settled into me like warm sunlight. For so long I had chased something external. But the real reward had bloomed inside me quietly, like a flower growing through stone. I finally understood. In that moment, I realized why he had looked so worried all those years. Not because I was lazy, but because I was asleep. He had seen potential in me buried under comfort and ease. So he crafted a journey designed to break me and rebuild me, and it worked. I wasn't the same person who had left that village. I had returned a man who had earned every scar, every lesson. My father didn't need to say more. His silence spoke volumes. And I suddenly felt grateful. Grateful for every hardship, every fear, every ounce of pain that shaped me. The days that followed felt lighter. I began to share stories from my journey with others. Children gathered around me to listen with wide eyes. Even the elders nodded, recognizing truths in my words. I worked alongside my father, helping the village with new energy and purpose. The people who once pitied me now looked at me with respect. But more importantly, I respected myself. I no longer feared struggle. In fact, I welcomed it, because I knew now every obstacle was a teacher in disguise. The world was no longer a place to escape. It was something to explore. As the seasons rolled on, I planted trees, repaired roads, and helped strangers the way I'd once been helped. Every good deed felt like a stone added to the foundation of a new life. I didn't need wealth. I had wisdom, I had courage, and above all, I had experience. Sometimes I would visit that old map, not as a guide, but as a memory, a reminder of where everything began. The cliff, the tree, the exhaustion, they were no longer symbols of failure. They were sacred. They were the fire that forged me, and I cherished them more than gold. Years later, when my father passed on, he left nothing behind but the bag and the map. But to me, it was worth more than any treasure chest. I carried his legacy not in coins, but in understanding. I took his place eventually, guiding young ones, telling them not what to seek, but how to look. I never revealed the truth about the map. If they asked, I simply smiled and said, "You'll know when you get there." Just like he had. And in my heart, I knew. They, too, would discover life's true treasure, one painful, beautiful step at a time. And now, as I sit here watching the sunset beyond the hills, I understand the final lesson he taught me. Life is not about arrival. It's about motion. It's about embracing the unexpected and learning from the fall. It's about people, places, seasons, and the dance between loss and discovery. There's no shortcut to meaning, no map to certainty, only paths and the courage to walk them. My father didn't give me a treasure. He gave me something far more valuable. He gave me the chance to find myself. And in doing so, I found everything I never knew I needed.